For more than 10 years, the cameras have been filming Yandy Smith and Mendeecees Harris. But nothing prepared viewers for the shocking revelation that recently surfaced during season 13B of LHATL. We've witnessed them endure incarceration, struggles in foster care, and never-ending baby mama drama. However, the most recent disclosure regarding a covert request from the Indies has been removed. The internet was going crazy, and Yandy was clearly shaken. Imagine believing that you have at last achieved stability, only to have your spouse approach you with a proposal so contentious that it jeopardizes the foundation of your marriage. After a production clip of Yandy leaving a private sit-down was leaked, the rumor began to circulate. A mask of disbelief and betrayal covered her face. Was there a betrayal of money? A request to grow the family in a manner that Yandy never approved of? Or maybe something even more intimate about Mendeecees' past that he's now prepared to reveal? We are dissecting every aspect of this developing scandal tonight. We are not merely discussing a pre-planned debate for the ratings. We are delving into the social media subliminals, the leaked documents, and the set eyewitness accounts that indicate Yandy may be at her breaking point. This isn't your average reality TV. One of the franchise's most recognizable couples is engaged in a high-stakes power struggle. Keep an eye out, because the specifics of this covert request will soon alter your perception of the Smith-Harris union. The fans have been waiting for this exposure. Furthermore, Yandy's response only scratches the surface of the extent to which Yandy Smith's world was completely upended in season 13B of Love and Hip Hop. You have to look past the glamour of the cameras and into the intricate workings of the Smith-Harris marriage in Atlanta. Yandy has been the undeniable creator of their family's reputation for many years. While her husband, Mendeecees Harris, was incarcerated at the federal level, she managed a household and a multi-million-dollar brand as a fixer, publicist, and theorist. Yandy leads and Mans follows in a particular power dynamic that is at work as a result of this history. However, that dynamic didn't simply change as the new season began, it completely collapsed. The covert request wasn't made at random. Weeks of cold silence and missed FaceTime calls preceded. Even the most expensive interior design couldn't conceal the intense attention that surrounded them when the cameras caught them at their new Atlanta estate. Mendeecees started acting in ways that Yandy wasn't accustomed to, including locking his phone, holding private meetings in the garage, and most importantly, talking about financial diversification without her. Advice for a woman whose life has revolved around knowledge. This was the first warning sign. Instead of concentrating on the current business, the bombshell was finally revealed during a scene that was meant to be a joyous launch for a new endeavor. Mendeecees drew Yandy aside to have a legacy conversation. According to production sources, the covert request relates to a major unilateral decision Mendeecees made about his children from past relationships and a sizable amount of the family's liquid assets. In particular, the request was an ultimatum rather than merely a query. According to reports, Mendeecees wants to transfer some of their joint wealth into a trust that Yandy has no control over, ostensibly to make amends for the wrongs done to his older sons. Taking care of your children may seem honorable at first. However, this request felt like a calculated betrayal in the world of the Smith-Harrises, where Yandy has frequently clashed with the mothers of Mendeecees' other children, Erica Dashazo and Samantha Wallace. There was more to Yandy's shock than just the money, as we can see in that now famous viral video. It was the understanding that Mendeecees was purposefully erecting a barrier between his family and theirs. She had the expression of a woman who had come to the realization that she might not have been the partner she believed herself to be, but rather a stand-in for his allegiance. Mendeecees revealed the second half of the bombshell as the argument intensified. In order to manage new interests outside of Yandy's management, he wants to spend a considerable amount of time back in New York, and possibly even abroad. This man's legal status prevented him from moving for years without authorization. He's using his newfound freedom to ask for a life that differs greatly from the one Yandy spent years crafting. When Yandy asked the straightforward question, the shock escalated into a full-blown emotional breakdown. "With whom have you been discussing this?" She was not prepared for the response. Wasn't a financial advisor or a lawyer. There are rumors among the Lotto crew that Mans has reconnected with members of his former people. By reintroducing these ghosts into their lives and making demands that prioritize his former life over their current one, Yandy put forth endless effort to keep him apart in order to preserve both his freedom and his reputation. In essence, Mendeecees told Yandy that her years of selflessness were just one chapter he's prepared to end. It is impossible to exaggerate the psychological impact on Yandy. Being the one who supported her partner has been the foundation of her entire main chick persona. The hardships she endured while he was incarcerated are invalidated if he is now asking for a secret lifestyle or financial independence that does not include her. The sound of a woman realizing her happily ever after it was constructed on a foundation of shifting sand is the shock we witness in season 113B. The Atlanta cast hasn't made the situation any simpler. The group was immediately divided when word of the request spread. The men, under the leadership of Kirk, Frost, and Scrappy, appeared to support Mendeecees' right to be a man and manage his affairs. However, the women recognized the betrayal for what it was. This caused a domino effect in Atlanta's social circles, transforming a private marital argument into a public discussion about independence versus loyalty. Yandy had to defend her response to friends who didn't realize how deep the secret was. It's just money or a move to them. Yandy sees it as a complete betrayal of the trust she built over the course of 10 years. We witnessed the slow-motion collision of an ideal marriage with a wall for a portion of this season. During these encounters, Mendeecees maintains a stoic, almost icy demeanor. He believes that he has served his time. He wants what he wants now that he has paid his dues to the family. However, what he seeks is a secret that could ruin the sentimental bank account that Yandy has been funding for the past 4 years. She wonders if she even knows the man sleeping across from her as he retreats deeper into this covert request each time she tries to get him back to the table. Fans were yelling at their screens as the episode ended on a suspenseful note. "It's already in motion, Yandy. I wasn't asking for permission. I was telling you how it's going to be," Mendeecees says, pulling out a folder of documents after a furious exchange in which Yandy accuses him of being ungrateful. The moment the Smith-Harris empire formally entered its most perilous phase, the screen fades to black on Yandy's tearful eyes. This isn't merely a request. It's a coup within a marriage. The shock was only the beginning. The fallout will be even more catastrophic as we move into the next stage of this saga. The question is not only whether they will remain together, but also who will be left standing when the full scope of Mendeecees' secret is finally made public. As the cameras followed the aftermath of that explosive revelation, the focus shifted from Yandy's shock to the logistics of Mendeecees' covert move. The silence that followed Mendeecees' ultimatum was not just heavy, but deafening. There are rumors on the streets of Atlanta and New York that the secret request wasn't entirely Mendeecees' idea. Rumors have surfaced that a former associate from his pre-prison days, someone with deep ties to the music industry and even deeper pockets, has re-entered the picture to offer Mans a way out of the reality TV husband. In part of this developing drama, we see the layers of the request peeled back to reveal a hidden hand of a third party that Yandy never anticipated. A large amount of Mendeecees and Yandy's joint venture capital would need to be moved into a high-risk offshore account, according to Box. An anonymous benefactor who allegedly proposed a massive independent venture, a talent management and distribution hub, for Yandy, who has spent years cleaning up their financial image and making sure every I was dotted and T was crossed for the IRS. This isn't just a business risk, it's a legal nightmare. In order to facilitate this shadow deal, Yandy was asked to sign over her power of attorney regarding certain shared properties. This is where the shock turned into a calculated defensive move, and Yandy's response is now more than just tears. It's all about strategy. To find out who was whispering in her husband's ear, she started her own covert investigation by contacting her network of industry insiders. What she found astounded her even more. Yandy saw this as a slow-motion divorce filing under the guise of a business opportunity, and she came to the conclusion that the request to be his own man was really a request to be a man without her. The secret request wasn't just about money. It was about a lifestyle change that involved men establishing a semi-permanent residence in a different city, effectively creating a split household dynamic. Without her, the conflict escalated to a high-stakes meeting in a neutral setting, a quiet, dimly lit lounge in Buckhead. When Yandy showed up as a CEO rather than a bereaved wife, in a moment that will go down in LHATL history, she brought her own set of documents, a counter-offer that would safeguard their children's future while keeping their assets under one roof. However, Mendeecees wasn't interested in a counter-offer. "You've been the lead for 10 years, he said to her. "It's time for Yandy to learn how to play a supporting role in my narrative." The production crew was taken aback by this line. It was a direct blow to Yandy's ego and her career as a powerful manager. As this power struggle grew more intense, the effects on their blended family became unavoidable. The kids, who are typically protected from industry talk, started to sense the instability in the home. The controversy revolves around the heartbreaking scene where some of the older kids were caught in the middle of a heated phone call and heard their father defend his covert request as a way to give them true independence away from the cameras. The exposed portion of this headline came into play when a series of leaked text messages between Mendeecees and this unidentified third party appeared on a well-known gossip blog. The messages described plans for a new chapter without mentioning Yandy's involvement in the decision-making process. Mendeecees is framing his secrecy as a move for the children, while Yandy sees it as a move for his own ego. The ride-or-die narrative was being dismantled in real time for the first time in their public history, and Yandy's initial shock transformed into a hard, cold resolve. She was no longer merely responding to a request. While Samantha and Erica have had their fair share of conflicts with Yandy, they suddenly found themselves in an awkward situation. Adding fuel to the fire examines the role of the baby mamas in this situation. She was getting ready for a war. The Harris family's internal politics became a maze of shifting allegiances, with everyone wondering where the money was actually going. Mendeecees' covert request was really about the children, who had to choose between trusting his new independent vision and feeling safer with Yandy's track record of stability. Yandy, looking flawless but clearly exhausted, confronted Mendeecees in front of their peers during a heated altercation at a group event hosted by Rashida, which was supposed to be a fashion showcase, but instead turned into a courtroom drama. "Is the secret worth the family?" she asked without yelling or hurling a drink. This section of the story illustrates the shift from a private shock to a public scandal. Mendeecees' reaction was a chilly stare and a walk away, leaving the rest of the cast and the audience in complete silence. The story's flow, which shifts from the what of the request to the why and the who, is crucial as we watch the boss lady deal with the possibility that her biggest client, her husband, is firing her. As we move into the last section of the script, we are no longer merely witnessing a shocked wife. Rather, we are witnessing a woman who is realizing that her husband's freedom may mean her exclusion. The stakes are extremely high. Now that the request has been made, the shock has subsided, and the secret is out. Yandy Smith finds herself in a difficult situation. The focus is shifting from defense to offense. Does she burn the bridge to save the empire she built? Or does she sign the papers and put her trust in the man she has defended for 10 years? We've established the betrayal, the hidden influences, and the fracturing of the family unit, and the next revelation, in part, promises to be the most explosive yet. A published headline: "The air in Atlanta has never felt heavier than in the final days of Season 1-3B." As the secret request went from a private whisper to a headline trending across social media, the narrative reached its inevitable explosive conclusion. The flow continues, building a sense of dread and excitement as we prepare to see how Yandy finally reacts when her back is against the wall and the secret request is no longer a secret. In this last section of our in-depth analysis, we witness Yandy Smith transcend the initial shock and enter a state of radical clarity. The secret was now about their marriage's identity, rather than just a business transaction or a third-party influencer. Yandy was essentially forced to choose between her loyalty as a ride or die and her dignity as a partner as a result of Mendeecees' request. The story culminated in a final close-set sit-down, which was so intense that even the season layout producers were reportedly moved by the raw emotion in the room. Yandy laid everything on the table after gathering all the proof of Mendeecees' covert negotiations and the associated financial risks. She showed him how his independent business was based on a house of cards and how the people he was trusting had vanished as soon as his legal issues started years ago. She didn't come with accusations, but rather the numbers. Mendeecees' response was the decisive factor. Would he recognize the wisdom in the woman who had saved his life? Or would his need for a new, uncontrolled identity triumph? The psychological warfare peaked when he implied that Yandy's fear was not about the family's safety, but rather about losing her status as his main character. Instead of the regret or epiphany that fans were hoping for, he doubled down, arguing that the only reason the venture looked risky was that it wasn't under her control. The realization that the man she had battled for now saw her as an enemy and that the covert request wasn't merely a business tactic was what shocked Yandy during this scene. Fans who had followed them since the New York days were devastated to see the franchise's first family disintegrating over issues of ego and independence. It was an exit strategy from their established power dynamic. The public's reaction to the news of this impasse on social media was divisive. He had been transferring money behind Yandy's back for much longer than she knew, according to the exposed documents that made their way to the blog. This was the ultimate betrayal of the joint account and joint life philosophy they had preached for 10 years. The financial trust that Mendeecees wanted to establish was already partially funded. When the legalities of their joint business ventures started to affect the production of the show, supporting characters who had previously remained neutral were forced to take sides. This had a final effect on the LHATL cast. The story took on a life of its own, and the public demanded a resolution. There were rumors that Yandy thought about taking a complete break from the cameras to deal with this situation in private, but the covert request had already gained much momentum. In the season's last episodes, we witness Yandy taking a number of actions that represent a new Yandy. In reaction to the shock, she started rebranding her solo endeavors and distancing herself from the Harris name in specific professional contexts to safeguard her own reputation and credit. If he desired independence, she would demonstrate what it meant. The irony was evident. Yandy granted Mendeecees' request for a secret life free from her influence, but not in the manner he had anticipated. The shock began when she rewrote the documents rather than signing them. In their last televised exchange of the season, Yandy looked straight into the camera and then at her husband, saying, "I can be your wife." This entire journey turned into a potent lesson on boundaries. "I will never be your casualty, but I can be your partner." Season 1, 3B's defining quote was this line. It stood for the point at which the secret became ineffective. Yandy eliminated the hidden hand's power over her marriage by revealing the request and confronting it. What does that mean for them now, though? The couple was still in the process of reorganizing as the season came to an end. The emotional harm was done even though the secret request was partially withdrawn due to legal scrutiny. The trust was gone, but the secret was revealed. The men relocating to a different wing of their house in the season's closing shots served as a tangible symbol of the separation his request had caused. The shock had subsided into a chilly, silent reality. The Smith-Harris union's legacy is at its most precarious right now. In the conventional sense, this was not a scandal involving infidelity or outside babies. The betrayal of the partnership itself was the scandal. As we consider the future, the question is not whether they will remain legally married, but rather whether the covert request has significantly altered their relationship. The shock was a wake-up call for Yandy. The exposure served as a reality check for Mendeecees. This in-depth examination of the secret request and the ensuing shock exposes a reality that is frequently concealed. In reality TV, the most intense conflicts occur in the quiet times when trust is either established or undermined, not in the club or at reunions. Harris has survived the streets, the system, and the cameras, according to Yandy, Smith, and Mendy. However, the question of whether they can coexist is still open. Even though the secret request was revealed, the healing process is still ongoing. The world is waiting to see if the Smith-Harris empire finally collapses, but the crown is heavier than ever. At last, it falls. That's the complete explanation of the covert request that has completely upended the Smith-Harris empire. But I'd like to hear from you now. Do you believe that Mendeecees is attempting to stand on his own defeat at last? Or has the woman who stayed down for him while he was incarcerated been completely betrayed? Is Yandy right to be taken aback? Or does she simply find it difficult to relinquish the power she has held for the past 10 years?